If you love spaghetti squash, but you don't love waiting nearly an hour for it to cook in the oven, this Instant Pot spaghetti squash is for you. The Instant Pot makes the process much faster, so today I'm going to show you how to cook a spaghetti squash in your pressure cooker in just a fraction of the time. There are two different ways to do this, so we're going to start with the fastest method first. You'll need to choose a spaghetti squash that is about 3 pounds so that it will fit in a 6-quart Instant Pot. If you have an 8-quart Instant Pot, a 4-pound spaghetti squash will most likely fit in there, but you may need to add a minute or two to the cooking time. If you're wondering how to choose a good spaghetti squash, look for one that is golden or dark yellow in color with a firm outer shell. You also want it to feel heavy for its size. Be sure to avoid any pale looking squash or ones that have any soft spots like this. The easiest way to cut a spaghetti squash in half is by cutting it crosswise. This way, you're only cutting through the hollow part of the squash instead of the tougher ends. This method of cutting will also create the longest spaghetti squash noodles. Use a spoon to scoop out the middle of the squash and save the seeds if you'd like to roast them later. Pour 1 cup of water into the bottom of your Instant Pot and place a trivet over that to help keep the squash lifted out of the water. I'm using the trivet that came with my machine. Place the spaghetti squash halves on top of the trivet, and at this point they shouldn't be sticking out too much from the top of your Instant Pot. It's okay if they stick out a little bit, as long as the lid closes easily. Check the silicone sealing ring in the lid of your Instant Pot to make sure it has some wiggle room and is properly seated. Then secure the lid and move the steam release valve to sealing. Cook at high pressure for 7 minutes. It will take roughly 10 minutes for the pot to come to pressure. When the cooking cycle is complete, carefully move the steam release valve to venting to quickly release the pressure. Make sure to keep your hand away from the top of the vent, since that's where all of the hot steam will be. When the floating valve in the lid drops, it's safe to open the lid. The spaghetti squash should be tender at this point, but you can test it with a fork to make sure that the shell is easily pierced. You can always add another minute or two of cooking if you need to, but this timing usually works well for a squash that is 3 to 3.5 pounds or smaller. If you'd rather skip the cutting process altogether, you can also cook a whole spaghetti squash in your Instant Pot. This method takes a little longer, but it's very convenient if you'd rather not cut through that tough outer shell. To prepare a whole squash, pierce it in the center several times with a knife to help it vent. Pour 1 cup of water into the bottom of your Instant Pot, then arrange a trivet over that. Place the squash on top of the trivet, then secure the lid and move the steam release valve to sealing. Cook a whole 3-pound spaghetti squash for 15 minutes at high pressure. It will take about 10 minutes for the pot to pressurize. When the cooking cycle is complete, let the pressure naturally release for 10 minutes to let the squash finish cooking. When the 10 minutes have passed, you can move the steam release valve to venting to release any remaining pressure. The squash should be very hot and tender at this point, so be sure to use oven mitts to remove it from the pressure cooker. As you can see, the shell is very easy to cut through now, and the only tricky part about cooking a squash whole is that you don't want to scoop out too much of the good spaghetti squash strands when you are scooping out the seeds from the middle. You can serve this pressure-cooked spaghetti squash as a vegetable side dish or use it as a nutrient-rich pasta alternative. For more spaghetti squash recipe ideas, be sure to check out the other recipes I have for you over on my website, detoxinista.com.